The restaurant reservation was for 7:30, but I should have known something was wrong when Celeste spent 3 hours getting ready for what was supposed to be our intimate Valentine's dinner. She emerged from our bedroom looking like she was headed to the Met Gala, not Romano's downtown. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. "You made the reservation, right, Owen?" she asked, checking her reflection in our hallway mirror for the 5th time. Her black dress hugged every curve, and her makeup was flawless. Too flawless for a quiet dinner with her husband of 4 years. "Of course I did," I replied, straightening my tie. I'd gone with the navy suit she bought me last Christmas, the one she said made me look almost sophisticated. Should have been my first red flag. Romano's was packed, which wasn't surprising for Valentine's Day. The hostess led us to a corner table with soft lighting and a view of the city. I pulled out Celeste's chair, and she smiled that dazzling smile that had first caught my attention at a coffee shop near her office building. "This is perfect," she said, but her eyes were scanning the room like she was looking for someone. I'd barely opened the wine menu when Victor Harlan appeared at our table. Celeste's boss was a tall, silver-haired man in his late 40s who wore expensive suits like armor and treated everyone around him like they existed solely for his entertainment. "Celeste, what a wonderful surprise," he said, flashing his politician's smile. "I hope you don't mind if I join you. I'm here alone tonight, and Valentine's Day can be so depressing for us single folks." Celeste practically glowed. "Of course. Owen, you remember Victor, my boss from Harlan Industries." I remembered Victor, all right, the man who called Celeste into emergency meetings that lasted until midnight. The same Victor who sent her expensive flowers from the company and took her on business trips to cities that definitely didn't need whatever HR services Celeste provided. "Sure," I said, forcing a smile. "Pull up a chair." Victor signaled the waiter with the casual arrogance of someone who'd never been told no. Within minutes, he'd ordered a bottle of wine that cost more than my monthly car payment and was regaling us with stories about his latest acquisition deal. Except he wasn't talking to us. He was talking to Celeste, and she was hanging on every word like he was revealing the secrets of the universe. "The property in Miami is going to be incredible," Victor was saying, his hand casually resting near Celeste's on the white tablecloth. "You'd love it there, Celeste. The beaches, the nightlife, very different from this cold New England weather." "It sounds amazing," Celeste breathed, and I watched her fingers inch closer to his. I cleared my throat. "So, Victor, what brings you to Romano's tonight? Hot date?" He laughed, but his eyes never left Celeste. "Just felt like treating myself to a good meal, though the company has made it much more enjoyable than I expected." The waiter appeared to take our orders. Victor and Celeste both ordered the lobster, chatting about wine pairings and sharing inside jokes about people from their office. I ordered a steak and wondered when exactly I'd become invisible. "Owen's in IT," Celeste explained to Victor, like she was apologizing for my existence. "He does contract work for small businesses. Very practical." "Practical," Victor repeated, and somehow made the word sound like an insult. "That's important too, I suppose. Someone has to keep the lights on while others are building empires." I took a long sip of wine and studied my wife's face. She was practically glowing under Victor's attention, laughing at his jokes, touching her hair in that unconscious way she did when she was flirting, the same way she'd touched her hair when we first met. Dinner arrived, and they continued their private conversation. Victor told stories about closing million-dollar deals, while Celeste shared office gossip and laughed at all his jokes. I might as well have been a piece of furniture. "The Hendricks account alone brought in $2.5 million last quarter," Victor was saying. Of course, I couldn't have done it without Celeste's help with the HR integration. "You're too kind," Celeste said, actually blushing. I'd heard enough. I stood up, pulling out my wallet. "Where are you going?" Celeste asked, finally acknowledging my presence. "Home," I said, dropping 320s on the table. "You two look like you're having such a great time. I'd hate to interrupt." Victor's smile was pure satisfaction. "Owen, don't be hasty. We're just having a friendly conversation." "Right, friendly." I looked at Celeste, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. "Happy Valentine's Day, sweetheart. Enjoy your lobster." I walked out of Romano's into the cold February night, my breath forming clouds in the frigid air. Behind me, I could hear the warm buzz of conversation and laughter from the restaurant. My wife's laughter, specifically. I was halfway to my car when I heard voices from the restaurant's side entrance. Curious, I stepped into the shadows between two parked cars and listened. God, that was easier than I thought it would be. Celeste's voice carried clearly in the cold air. "I told you he'd storm off," came another female voice. Amber Chen, Celeste's best friend and fellow social climber. Men like Owen are so predictable. Show them a real man, and they fold like cheap suits. Victor was perfect tonight, Celeste continued. Did you see how jealous Owen got? It's exactly what we needed. My blood turned to ice water. So when are you going to file for divorce? Amber asked. Soon. Victor's lawyer is drawing up papers that'll give me half of everything, plus alimony. Owen's little IT business is worth more than he thinks, especially with those government contracts he landed last year. And then you and Victor can finally be together, Amber said with a giggle. Mrs. Celeste Harlan has a nice ring to it. It really does, Celeste agreed. I just need to play the victim for a few more weeks. Make it look like Owen's jealousy and controlling behavior drove me away. They moved back inside, leaving me standing in the parking lot with my entire world crashing down around me. 4 years of marriage. 4 years of building a life together. Of trusting her. Of loving her. All of it had been a lie. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, letting the rage build. Celeste thought she was so clever, playing the long game with her boss while setting me up as the villain in her divorce story. She thought I was just some predictable IT guy who'd roll over and let her take everything. She was about to learn how wrong she was. I started the engine and drove home to our apartment, my mind already working through possibilities. Celeste had made one crucial mistake tonight. She'd underestimated exactly who she was dealing with. Game on, sweetheart. I got home before Celeste, which gave me time to think. Our apartment suddenly felt different, like I was seeing it through new eyes. The expensive furniture she'd insisted we buy, the art on the walls that she'd chosen, even the damn throw pillows that served no purpose except to make the couch more sophisticated. How long had she been planning this? How long had I been living with a stranger? I was nursing a beer and staring at the city lights when she finally came home around 11. She looked flushed and happy, like she'd just had the best night of her life, which I suppose she had. Owen? I didn't expect you to wait up, she said, hanging her coat in the closet. Couldn't sleep, I replied. How was the rest of dinner? Fine. Victor and I talked about work stuff mostly. You know how it is? Right, work stuff. I took another sip of beer. Did you have a good time? She studied my face, probably looking for signs of the jealous rage she was hoping to provoke. It was nice. Victor's actually very interesting when you get to know him. I bet he is. Celeste sat down on the opposite end of the couch, maintaining careful distance. Owen, about tonight. I know you were upset, but Victor really was just being friendly. There's nothing for you to worry about. The lie rolled off her tongue so smoothly that I almost admired her skill. Almost. Of course not, I said. Why would I worry about my wife having dinner with her handsome, wealthy boss on Valentine's Day? Don't be sarcastic. It doesn't suit you. What does suit me, Celeste? According to you, I mean. She frowned, clearly not expecting this line of questioning. What's that supposed to mean? Just curious about your opinion of your husband. You know, the practical IT guy who keeps the lights on while real men build empires. Her cheeks flushed. You heard that? Hard to miss when you're sitting right there. Owen, I didn't mean anything by it. I was just explaining what you do for work. Right. I finished my beer and stood up. I'm going to bed. Big day tomorrow. What's happening tomorrow? I paused at the bedroom door and looked back at her. Work stuff? You know how it is? I lay in bed listening to Celeste move around the apartment, taking her time with her nighttime routine. She was probably texting Victor, I realized, telling him about our conversation, planning their next move. When she finally came to bed, I pretended to be asleep. She slipped under the covers and settled on her side of the mattress, careful not to touch me. Within minutes, her breathing evened out into sleep. I waited another hour before getting up. Celeste's purse was on the kitchen counter where she'd left it. I'd watched her use her phone's passcode enough times to know it by heart. 214, February 14th, Valentine's Day. How romantic. Her main phone had the usual stuff, work emails, texts from friends, social media, but I knew Celeste better than she thought. She was too smart to use her regular phone for anything truly incriminating. I found her second phone in the zippered compartment of her purse, the one she thought was so cleverly hidden. This passcode took me 3 tries, 1025. October 25th, Victor's birthday. The text thread between Celeste and Victor made for fascinating reading. Victor. Dinner was perfect tonight. Owen played his part beautifully. Celeste. I told you he'd get jealous and storm off. He's so predictable. Victor. Did he say anything when you got home? Celeste. Just some passive-aggressive comments. Nothing I can't handle. Victor. Good. We need a few more public incidents like tonight to establish the pattern. My lawyer says the more evidence we have of his jealous, controlling behavior, the better your settlement will be. Celeste. How much longer do we have to wait? Victor. A few more weeks. Maybe a month. I want this to be airtight. You deserve everything that's coming to you, darling. I scrolled back through weeks of messages. They'd been planning this for months. Every late night at the office, every business trip, every time she'd come home talking about her wonderful boss. It had all been leading to this moment. But the text revealed something else interesting. Victor was married. His wife, Patricia, was apparently out of town visiting her sick mother in California. That's why he'd been free for dinner tonight. I copied everything to a secure folder on my laptop, then carefully returned the phone to Celeste's purse. She stirred when I slipped back into bed, but didn't wake up. The next morning, Celeste was all sweetness and light, making coffee and asking about my plans for the day like nothing had happened. I might work late tonight, she said, not meeting my eyes. Victor wants to go over the quarterly reports. On a Thursday night? You know how he is? Very dedicated. Right, dedicated. I finished my coffee and grabbed my laptop bag. I'll probably be late too. Got a new client who needs some emergency server work. It wasn't entirely a lie. I did have work to do, just not the kind Celeste was expecting. I spent the day at my office downtown, a small space I rented in a converted warehouse building. Most of my work was legitimate. Small businesses that needed their networks secured, databases optimized, that sort of thing. But I'd also built up a side business over the years doing more specialized work for divorce lawyers and private investigators. People always underestimated what a good IT guy could find out about someone's digital life. I started with Victor Harlan. Public records showed he'd been married to Patricia Harlan for 15 years. They lived in a mansion in the hills outside the city, worth about $3 million. Victor's company, Harlan Industries, was privately held but successful enough to afford him a lifestyle most people could only dream about. More interesting were the financial records I was able to access through some creative database searches. Victor had expensive tastes and the income to support them, but he also had some significant debts. His company had taken out several large loans in the past year, and there were liens against some of his properties. Maybe Victor's empire wasn't as solid as he pretended. I was deep in research when my phone buzzed with a text from Trey Morrison, my old army buddy who now worked as a mechanic and occasional private investigator. Trey. Beer tonight? Sarah's working late and I'm bored. Owen. Actually, I might have some work for you. Interested in making some extra cash? Trey. Always. What's the job? Owen. Surveillance. Need someone watched for a few days. Trey. Legal? Owen. Completely. Divorce case. Trey. Yours? I stared at the phone for a long moment before typing back. Owen. Yeah, mine. Trey. I'll be right over. Trey arrived an hour later with coffee and sandwiches from the deli down the street. He was a big guy, 6'4" with arms like tree trunks from years of working on cars. He'd been my squad leader in Afghanistan, and I'd trusted him with my life more than once. So, he said, settling into the chair across from my desk, want to tell me what's going on? I filled him in on the previous night's dinner and what I'd found on Celeste's phone. Trey listened without interruption, his expression growing darker as the story progressed. Damn, Owen, I'm sorry. I always thought Celeste was... He paused, clearly trying to find a diplomatic way to phrase it. A gold-digging social climber? Yeah, me too. I just thought she loved me anyway. So what's the plan? You want me to follow them, get pictures? Eventually. But first, I want to know everything about Victor Harlan. His schedule, his habits, his weaknesses. If Celeste wants to play games, we're going to play by my rules. Trey grinned, and I recognized the expression from our military days. It was the look he got right before we executed a particularly satisfying mission. This is going to be fun, he said. Over the next week, Trey and I conducted surveillance on Victor Harlan with military precision. We learned that he was a creature of habit. Gym at 6 a.m., office by 8, lunch at the same upscale restaurant 3 days a week. He drove a black Bentley that he was ridiculously proud of, parking it in the same spot every day and checking for scratches like it was made of gold. More importantly, we confirmed that Victor was definitely married and definitely cheating. Patricia Harlan had returned from California, and Victor was juggling his wife and my wife with the casual arrogance of a man who thought he was untouchable. Guy's got balls, I'll give him that, Trey said as we watched Victor leave Celeste's office building on Friday afternoon, taking your wife to lunch while his wife thinks he's in meetings. He's about to find out that balls aren't enough, I replied. That evening, Celeste came home late again, full of apologies about work demands and quarterly reports. I played the understanding husband perfectly, even suggesting she invite Victor over for dinner sometime. You know, so I can get to know your boss better, I said, since you work so closely together. The panic that flashed across her face was almost worth the weeks of deception. Oh, that's sweet of you, but Victor's very busy, and he's not really the home dinner type. Right. Too sophisticated for our little apartment. That's not what I meant. Of course not. I was getting good at the passive-aggressive husband routine. It was exactly what Celeste wanted, evidence of my jealousy and unreasonable behavior that she could use against me later. Saturday morning, I got a call from my neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, an elderly woman who spent most of her day watching the building from her window. Owen, dear, I hope you don't mind me calling, but I wanted to let you know that Celeste had a visitor yesterday afternoon while you were at work. A visitor? A gentleman in a very expensive car. They went upstairs together around 2 o'clock, and he didn't leave until almost 5. My grip tightened on the phone. Did you recognize him? No, but he was very well dressed, distinguished looking. I only mention it because Celeste they seemed very friendly. Thank you for letting me know, Mrs. Rodriguez. I appreciate you looking out for us. Of course, dear. I hope everything's all right. Everything was definitely not all right, but it was about to get a lot more interesting. I called Trey and filled him in on the afternoon visit. They're getting bolder. Victor was in our apartment. In your bed? Probably. Damn, that's cold, even for a cheating wife. It's also exactly what we need. They're getting careless. So what's next? Next, we give them exactly what they want. A jealous husband who's losing control. Sunday evening, I put my plan into motion. Celeste was taking a shower when I used her phone to send Victor a text. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Owen's getting suspicious, but I don't care anymore. I'm ready to end this charade. Victor's response came within minutes. Soon, darling. Just a little longer and we'll have everything we want. I deleted both messages and put the phone back where I'd found it. Monday morning, I followed Celeste to work, staying far enough back that she wouldn't notice. She met Victor in the parking garage of her building, and even from a distance, I could see the intimate way they greeted each other. I waited until they were in the elevator, then called the main number for Harlan Industries. Victor Harlan's office, please. I'm sorry, Mr. Harlan is in meetings all morning. Can I take a message? This is Owen Blackwell. I'm Celeste Blackwell's husband. I need to speak with Mr. Harlan about my wife's work schedule. It's urgent. There was a pause. Let me see if I can reach him. 5 minutes later, Victor's smooth voice came on the line. Owen, what can I do for you? I need to talk to you about Celeste, in person. Is everything all right? That depends on your definition of all right. Can you meet me for lunch today? Another pause. Of course. How about Romano's? Say, 12:30? Perfect. See you there. I hung up and smiled. Romano's was where this had all started. It seemed fitting that it would be where Victor Harlan's world began to crumble. I arrived at Romano's 15 minutes early and asked for a table with a view of the entrance. Victor arrived exactly on time, looking confident and relaxed. He probably thought he was about to have a pleasant conversation with the cuckolded husband who was too stupid to know what was happening. He was half right about the stupid part. Owen, he said, settling into the chair across from me. Thanks for calling. I've been wanting to talk to you. Have you? Absolutely. Celeste speaks about you all the time. She's very devoted to you. The lie was so audacious that I almost laughed. Is that what you call it? Victor's smile faltered slightly. I'm not sure I follow. Let me be more direct then. I know you're sleeping with my wife. The color drained from Victor's face, but he recovered quickly. Owen, I think there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding. I know about the apartment visits. I know about the business trips that aren't really business trips. I know about the divorce plan. Victor leaned back in his chair, and I watched him recalculate the situation. When he spoke again, his voice was colder. I see. And what exactly do you plan to do with this information? That depends. How much is my silence worth to you? Excuse me? You heard me. You want my wife? Fine, but it's going to cost you. Victor's eyes narrowed. You're trying to blackmail me? I'm trying to negotiate a business arrangement. You get Celeste, I get compensated for my inconvenience. Everyone wins. And if I refuse? I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo Trey had taken of Victor and Celeste kissing in the parking garage. Then I send this to your wife, your board of directors, and every business journalist in the city. How do you think that'll play with your investors? Victor stared at the photo for a long moment, then looked up at me with something that might have been respect. How much? 500,000. He laughed. You're insane. Am I? How much is your reputation worth? Your marriage? Your company? You don't understand who you're dealing with, Owen. Actually, I think I do. You're a rich, arrogant bastard who thinks he can take whatever he wants without consequences. But here's the thing about consequences. They don't care how much money you have. Victor's face was flushed with anger now. You have no idea what I'm capable of. Neither do you. I stood up and dropped a 20 on the table. Think about my offer. You have 24 hours to decide. I walked out of Romano's feeling better than I had in weeks. Victor Harlan was about to learn that some people fight back when you try to destroy their lives, and this was just the beginning. Victor's response came faster than I expected. That evening, while Celeste was supposedly working late again, 2 men in expensive suits showed up at my apartment building. I watched them from my window as they talked to Mrs. Rodriguez, showing her some kind of identification and asking questions. Private investigators. Victor was trying to dig up dirt on me. Good luck with that, I thought. My military record was clean, my business was legitimate, and I'd never even had a speeding ticket. But the fact that he'd escalated so quickly told me I'd hit a nerve. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Back off, or you'll regret it. I replied, 23 hours and counting. An hour later, Celeste came home looking frazzled. Owen, we need to talk. Sure. How was work? Victor told me about your lunch today. I looked up from my laptop with what I hoped was an innocent expression. Oh, what did he say? He said you accused him of having an affair with me. Did I? I don't remember it that way. Celeste sat down across from me, her face a mask of hurt and confusion. Owen, how could you even think something like that? Victor is my boss. He's married. The whole idea is ridiculous. Is it? Of course it is. I love you. I would never cheat on you. The sincerity in her voice was almost convincing. If I hadn't seen the text messages and witnessed their meetings, I might have believed her. Then you won't mind if I hire a private investigator to prove it, I said. Her face went white. What? If there's nothing going on, an investigation will clear everything up. Might even help with the harassment lawsuit I'm planning against Victor. Harassment lawsuit? For trying to break up my marriage. I've been documenting everything. The Valentine's dinner, the late-night meetings, the way he looks at you. A good lawyer could make a strong case. Celeste was quiet for a long moment, clearly trying to figure out how much I actually knew. Owen, you're scaring me. This isn't like you. Maybe you don't know me as well as you think. That night, I heard Celeste whispering into her phone in the bathroom. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was urgent, panicked. The next morning, Victor called me directly. We need to meet, he said without preamble. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Tonight, 8 o'clock. The parking garage at Riverside Mall, top level. Sounds ominous. Just be there. The line went dead. I called Trey immediately. Victor wants to meet tonight. Parking garage. Could be trouble. Want backup? Definitely. But stay hidden unless things go bad. Define bad. If I end up bleeding, feel free to intervene. Trey chuckled. Got it. Try not to bleed. I spent the day making preparations. If Victor was planning something violent, I wanted to be ready. I also wanted evidence of whatever he was planning to do. At 7:30 that evening, I drove to Riverside Mall. The top level of the parking garage was mostly empty, just a few scattered cars belonging to late shoppers. I parked near the elevator and waited. Victor arrived 10 minutes late, driving his precious Bentley. He parked 20 feet away and got out slowly, his hands visible. He was alone, which was either a good sign or a very bad one. Oh, Owen, he said as he approached. Victor, nice evening for a chat. Let's skip the pleasantries. I want to know what you really want. I told you, 500,000. And I told you that's insane. But I'm prepared to make you a counteroffer. I'm listening. Victor reached into his jacket, and I tensed, but he only pulled out an envelope. 50,000 cash. Take it and disappear. Leave the city, leave Celeste, and never contact either of us again. I looked at the envelope without touching it. That's your counteroffer? 50 grand and exile? It's more than you deserve. See, that's where you're wrong. I deserve a lot more than money. Such as? Justice. Satisfaction. The look on your face when your world falls apart. Victor's expression hardened. You're making a mistake, Owen. I've tried to be reasonable, but you're forcing my hand. What's that supposed to mean? It means I know things about you. Your military service, for instance. That incident in Afghanistan that got you discharged early. I felt ice in my veins. What incident? The one involving civilian casualties. The one that was covered up to avoid an international incident. How do you think Celeste would react if she knew her husband was a war criminal? The lie was so outrageous, so completely fabricated, that for a moment I was speechless. Then I started laughing. That's the best you can do. Make up war crimes. I have documents. Witness statements. Very convincing evidence. Forged evidence, you mean? Does it matter? By the time anyone proves it's fake, your reputation will be destroyed. Your business will be gone. Celeste will be horrified and grateful to have Victor Harlan to comfort her. I had to admire the plan's elegance, even as I despised the man who'd conceived it. You've really thought this through. I don't leave things to chance. Neither do I. I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen. It displayed a live video feed of our conversation being broadcast to a private server. Smile, Victor. You're being recorded. His face went from confident to furious in seconds. Son of a bitch. That's not very nice language for a distinguished businessman, especially one who just threatened to frame someone for war crimes. Victor lunged for my phone, but I'd been expecting it. I stepped aside and let his momentum carry him past me. He stumbled and caught himself against a concrete pillar. Careful there, Victor. Wouldn't want you to hurt yourself. He straightened up, his expensive suit rumpled and his face red with rage. This isn't over. Actually, it is. You see, while you were busy trying to dig up dirt on me, I was doing the same thing to you. Want to know what I found? I don't care what you think you found. How about the fact that Harlan Industries is 3 months behind on loan payments? Or that you've been using company funds to pay for your affair with my wife, hotel rooms, jewelry, that little weekend trip to Miami you took last month? Victor's face went pale. You can't prove any of that. Can't I? I'm pretty good with financial databases, Victor. Amazing what you can find when you know where to look. You hacked into my company's records? I prefer the term digital investigation, and I found some very interesting things that would fascinate the IRS, and your wife, and your board of directors. Victor was quiet for a long moment, clearly realizing that the balance of power had shifted. What do you want? I want you to leave my wife alone. That's it? That's it. End the affair, transfer her to another department and pretend she doesn't exist. Do that, and all the evidence I've gathered disappears. And if I refuse, then I destroy you. Professionally, personally, financially. Your choice. Victor stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Fine, it's over. Good. Oh, and Victor, if you ever threaten me again, the next conversation we have won't be nearly this pleasant. I walked back to my car, leaving Victor standing alone in the parking garage. As I drove away, I could see him in my rearview mirror, still standing there like a man who'd just watched his world collapse. But I wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. The next few days were fascinating to watch. Victor, true to his word, began distancing himself from Celeste at work. Their text messages became purely professional, and the late-night meetings stopped abruptly. Celeste, meanwhile, was spiraling. She couldn't understand why Victor had suddenly become cold and distant. She tried calling him, texting him, even showing up at his office, but he refused to see her. I think something's wrong with Victor, she told me over dinner Friday night. He's been acting so strange this week. Maybe he's just busy with work, I suggested. No, it's more than that. He won't even look at me. It's like I don't exist. I made sympathetic noises while internally celebrating. Watching Celeste's confusion and growing desperation was almost as satisfying as seeing Victor's fear in the parking garage. But I knew this was just the first phase. Celeste wasn't going to give up on her meal ticket that easily. She'd find a way to get Victor back, or she'd find someone else to replace him. Either way, she'd keep lying to me, keep pretending to be the loving wife while planning my destruction. That's when I decided to accelerate my timeline. Saturday morning, I told Celeste I was going out to meet a potential client. Instead, I drove to Patricia Harlan's art studio downtown. I discovered through my research that Victor's wife was a talented sculptor who maintained her own workspace separate from their mansion. Patricia was a striking woman in her early 40s, with silver-streaked hair and paint-stained fingers. She looked up from her work when I knocked on the studio door. "Can I help you?" "Mrs. Harlan, my name is Owen Blackwell. I think we need to talk about your husband." Her expression didn't change, but something shifted behind her eyes. "I see. Come in." The studio was filled with beautiful sculptures and half-finished paintings. Patricia gestured for me to sit on a paint-splattered couch while she poured 2 cups of coffee from a pot on a hot plate. "So," she said, settling into a chair across from me, "you're here about Victor's affair." I nearly choked on my coffee. "You know?" "Of course I know. I've known about all of them. Victor thinks he's very clever, but he's actually quite predictable." "All of them?" "There have been several over the years. Usually employees, sometimes clients. They never last long. Victor gets bored easily. I stared at her, trying to process this information. If you know, why don't you divorce him? Patricia smiled sadly. Because I love him, despite his flaws. And because I know that none of these affairs mean anything to him. They're just diversions. This one might be different. How so? I told her about Celeste's plan to marry Victor after divorcing me, about the texts I'd found and the timeline they'd established. Patricia listened without interruption, her expression growing more serious as the story progressed. I see, she said when I finished. So this woman actually thinks Victor is going to leave me for her. That's the plan. Patricia was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window at the city beyond. You know, I've put up with a lot over the years, the affairs, the lies, the humiliation, but I've never had to deal with someone who actively tried to destroy my marriage. I'm sorry. I know this must be difficult to hear. Actually, it's clarifying. For the first time in years, I know exactly what I need to do. She stood up and walked to her desk, pulling out a business card. This is my lawyer's number. Call him Monday morning and tell him I sent you. He specializes in divorce cases where one party has been creative with their finances. Mrs. Harlan, I appreciate the gesture, but I'm not sure I want to go through a messy divorce. Oh, the divorce won't be messy at all, because by the time we're done, neither Victor nor your wife will have the resources to fight us. The smile on Patricia's face was absolutely terrifying. What are you planning? Victor has been using company funds to finance his affairs for years. I've been documenting everything, waiting for the right moment to act. Your wife's little scheme just moved up my timeline. I left Patricia's studio feeling like I just witnessed the beginning of something biblical. A woman scorned was dangerous enough, but a woman scorned who also happened to be a brilliant artist with 15 years of evidence and a killer lawyer was something else entirely. Sunday evening, I was reading in bed when Celeste's phone buzzed with a text. She was in the shower, so I checked it. The message was from Victor. Meet me tomorrow at Romano's, 7 p.m. We need to talk. I deleted the message and put the phone back. Monday evening, Celeste left work early, claiming she had errands to run. I knew she was really going to meet Victor, probably hoping to salvage their relationship. I arrived at Romano's 30 minutes after the scheduled meeting time and took a seat at the bar where I could observe the dining room. Celeste and Victor were at a corner table, and even from a distance, I could see that the conversation wasn't going well. Celeste was leaning forward, gesturing emphatically. Victor looked uncomfortable, constantly checking his phone and glancing around the restaurant. Their body language told the whole story. She was desperate. He was done. After 20 minutes, Victor stood up and walked out, leaving Celeste sitting alone at the table. She stayed there for another 10 minutes, staring at her phone, before finally gathering her things and leaving. I followed her home, arriving a few minutes after she did. She was in the kitchen, pouring herself a large glass of wine when I walked in. How were the errands? I asked. Fine, she said without looking at me. You look upset. Everything okay? Just tired. I watched her drain half the wine glass in one gulp. Want to talk about it? There's nothing to talk about. Okay, I'll be in the study if you need me. I spent the evening working on my laptop while listening to Celeste pace around the apartment, making phone calls and sending texts. Her voice was too low for me to make out the words, but the tone was increasingly frantic. Around midnight, she finally went to bed. I waited until I heard her breathing even out, then checked her phones. Her regular phone showed dozens of unanswered calls and texts to Victor. Her secret phone had one new message, sent an hour ago. It's over. Don't contact me again. If you try to cause problems for me or my family, you'll regret it. Celeste had typed and deleted at least 20 responses, but hadn't sent any of them. I put the phones back and returned to bed, listening to my wife's quiet sobs in the darkness. Part of me felt sorry for her. She'd gambled everything on a man who'd never had any intention of leaving his wife, and now she was facing the collapse of her entire plan. But mostly, I felt satisfaction. Celeste had made her choice when she decided to betray our marriage. Now she was learning that actions have consequences. And I wasn't done teaching her that lesson yet. Tuesday, 9 a.m. My phone rang. Mr. Blackwell, James Morrison, Patricia Harlan's attorney. Lunch today? We met in a dim corner booth downtown. Patricia filed this morning, he said, sliding a coffee across the table. Divorce, plus a very thick file she's handing to the U.S. attorney. Embezzlement, tax fraud, fake expenses. Victor's looking at 12 to 15 years. And your wife? He smiled like a man dealing aces. Every necklace, every trip, every business lunch Victor paid for was company money. That makes her an accessory at best, co-conspirator at worst. I exhaled. When does the hammer drop? Search warrants this afternoon. News hits tonight or tomorrow. She's got roughly 48 hours of freedom left. That night at dinner, Celeste barely touched her salmon. She kept glancing at her silent phone. You okay? I asked. Just tired. Then, out of nowhere. Owen, do you still love me? I let the silence sit a beat. I did. Do you love me? Of course I do. Her voice cracked on the lie. We could take a trip, she said suddenly. This weekend, somewhere warm, just us. Translation. Victor wasn't answering, and her escape hatch was closing. Funny, I said. Victor's calendar just opened up permanently. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Wednesday, 10:03 a.m. Morrison again. Papers filed. Feds are inside Harlan Industries right now. By 3:00 p.m., my buddy Trey texted a photo. Victor in cuffs, Celeste white as paper, watching agents carry out boxes. I got home at 6. Celeste was in our bedroom, throwing clothes into a Louis Vuitton weekender, hands shaking so hard she could barely zip it. Owen, we have to go. Tonight. Go where? Anywhere. Victor got arrested. The FBI, they were asking about me, about the gifts, the trips. Celeste, I sat on the bed. Stop packing. She froze. I know, I said quietly. The affair, the divorce plot, the text where you laughed about bleeding me dry after you left, I've known for weeks. The suitcase slipped from her fingers. How? Doesn't matter. What matters is Victor's going to prison, and you're going with him. She crumpled. Owen, please. It wasn't supposed to. You wanted a better life, I finished for her. You're about to get a very different one. She reached for me, tears streaming. I love you. I made a mistake. We can fix this. You made a choice. I'm just the consequence. I walked to the door. Where are you going? She sobbed. Hotel. My lawyer will serve you tomorrow. I suggest you call yours. Owen. You left me the day you decided I wasn't enough. I'm only making it official. I shut the door on her crying. 3 days later, the headline screamed, Harlan Industries, CEO arrested in 14mm fraud. Right below it, a smaller photo. Executive's wife, Celeste Blackwell, taken into custody as alleged accomplice. I read it in a quiet cafe 3 states away, new city, new apartment, new life. Some people say I should have forgiven her. They weren't the ones she planned to ruin. I finished my coffee, left a tip, and never looked back. Justice doesn't always wear a cape. Sometimes it just hands you the match and walks away before the fire starts.